Well, I spoke a short time ago to Chris Minns, the opposition leader, where I began by asking what he thought about the policy.
Yeah, look, obviously it's an expensive policy, Andrew. If we're going to put that much money into the future of young people in New South Wales and Australia, I think it should be directed towards education in particular. We see outcomes when it comes to schools in New South Wales going backwards. We need to lift the level of performance across the education system in this state. I'd much rather make sure that the gift to the future generations is a world-class education. I think that should be the priority.
But you don't have a similar promise, do you, to Michael Daly last time with his $2 billion extra for education?
Well, obviously our policies in relation to education involve a $400 million education future fund. We've also announced policies to convert 10,000 teachers from temporary contracts to permanent positions. We've got policies around reducing the amount of admin work that teachers do, and we're going to lift the wages cap. I mean, the government can't have it both ways. They can't say on Sunday that there's enough money for a policy that costs $850 million that will be realised in 25 years' time, but we don't have enough money to sit down and work out a fair wage deal with the essential workers in New South Wales that we need to run our schools and hospitals.
Yeah, but this is pretty appealing, though, electorally, I guess, isn't it? Plenty of us put money aside for our kids when they turn 18, and this supplements that. And I guess it remains on their balance sheet for a time.
Couple of things. I mean, firstly, if you're wealthy enough to put aside, let's just say you got 3 kids and you're wealthy enough to put aside $3,000 for them every single year, then you might look at the policy. If you're on family tax benefit A and you get $200 into those accounts, you'll look at the policy. I'm really worried about the missing middle, and I'm talking about people on average salaries in New South Wales that both mum and dad are working around the clock. Inflation is smashing their family budgets. They feel like they're getting further and further behind, and they need help immediately, not in 20 years' time. There's not much in this policy for them. And if you've got 3 kids, not many families have $3,000 to invest in a fund like that. Any discretionary income's either going on the power bill or going on the mortgage.
Well, there are so many of what I would call electoral bribes that have been introduced by this government. You've got back-to-school vouchers, you've had toll relief, you've got kids active vouchers, you've got kids creative vouchers. Are you committing yourself to keeping all of these if you're elected?
You know, Andrew, so much of the compensation that they pass out in vouchers is as a result of privatisation, whether it's energy or tolls. The reason that the rebates are needed is because the infrastructure that you need to use or the utilities that you need to use are too expensive after privatisation. I think there's been about $3 billion worth of funding going into energy rebates after privatisation, nearly $1 billion in rebates to motorists in Sydney to use toll roads. And I think I'd make this point, when it comes to privatisation, that's never put on the sticker price. We know how much we're getting in from a private company that buys the utility, but the government never says in a few years' time, these things will be so expensive, we'll have to compensate you just to use them.
Yes, but are you committing to keeping the vouchers, all the vouchers?
Well, we're looking at them. Obviously, we're going to the next election with our policy platform in place. Some policies we've already announced, like, for example, the $60 toll cap for New South Wales motorists. We'll have more to say closer to the election. And any changes will be obviously signalled and flagged well before polling day. But I should say, Andrew, I don't know if you're cutting me off, sorry, but I should say, obviously, at the moment, with rising cost of living and inflation hitting people's back pockets, I'm not going to make major changes to rebates that people need to get through their lives. I mean, inflation's running at 7 and 8%. It's a massive impost on family budgets, and I'm not going to make a bad or difficult situation worse.
OK, you seem to be going this economic conservative route. It's very Kevin Rudd, can I say? I understand Lachlan Harris, who used to be his advisor, is advising you on this campaign. Is that pretty deliberate there? Yeah,
obviously we've got advisors and people that have stepped in to give us a hand. You'd know that resourcing in opposition is pretty tough when you're up against the mountainous resources of the government of the day, but we've got good policies, we've got good plans, and I think we're hopefully communicating them well with 2 weeks to go.
It does seem to me the government, through privatisation, I know how opposed to you are to it, has built an awful lot of infrastructure off the back of it. Why are you so anti-privatisation, and why are you not committing to as many business plans as as the government. That seems a difficult political road in the sense you're saying to people, look, we're just going to build less in future years.
Well, we're being honest. I mean, the first thing I need to say is that we'll commit and build as much infrastructure in as many places as soon as we can. We've already committed to over $100 billion worth of infrastructure over the forward estimates, so the next 4 years. But, Andrew, both Labor and the Liberals have to borrow $20 billion this year, $20 billion the year after, and $20 billion in years 3 and 4. Combined $80 billion worth of borrowings. Now, that's a lot of money to go on the balance sheet. I think that those projects are important and I'm committed to seeing them go ahead. But imagine chucking another $50 billion worth of unfunded spending on top of that when you've already got a $200 or near $200 billion debt in the state, the largest the state has ever seen, more than 20% of GSP. That has to be paid off by future generations, and I'm not going to build infrastructure by selling off assets because I think the price paid for regular consumers is just too high.
On the wages cap, how big could public service pay rises be under your government? Yeah,
well, Andrew, you know, I've said many times during this debate that it's not possible for me to negotiate with representatives of essential workers from opposition. But New South Wales is the only state in the entire country with the wages cap in place. The other states seem to be able to work towards fair deals on behalf of their workforce. I think we should be able to do the same thing here. And it's the dogmatic approach from Dominic Perrottet where in the term of the last parliament, instead of a 2 or 2.5% pay increase, he wound it all the way back to zero. Is one of the leading reasons why I think you've got an essential worker crisis across public services in this state because of that decision.
Do you want it at 4 or 5% a year? Because that's what it was under the last Labor government.
Yeah, I think you'll find that over that period of time, and it was 16 years, it moved around a bit, similar to the New South Wales government's position today. I mean, they insisted it's 2.5% wages cap, but Andrew, you'd remember it went from 0 to 0.3 to 1.5 to 2.5 to 3 to 3.5 with productivity. So it's not possible for the government to outline what their wages bill will be over the next 4 years. We're in a similar situation. It's difficult for us too, but I'm convinced if we sit down, work with essential workers, we can make a difference and look at the alternative. I mean, we've got 3,000 teacher vacancies in New South Wales. 1 in 10 patients have to wait longer than 19 hours in an emergency department. Unless we start investing in human capital and the people we need in our essential services, things will get worse and not better.
Let me just ask this particular aspect again. Could it be 4 or 5% a year or more?
It's not possible for me to negotiate with them from opposition, but I don't think that's a radical position for me to have for 2 reasons. Firstly, no other state in the Commonwealth has that position in place, and even the Perrottet government has radically changed the wages cap over the last 4 years. And I think the big fear for essential workers in New South Wales is, despite the fact that he says in year 3 and 4 it'll be 2.5%, he could wind it all the way back to zero. Services in the state won't get better, they'll get worse.
It could be 4 to 5% or more.
Well, we've made it very clear that when we sit down around the table, we'll go in with strict economic principles in place. Any increases will have to be paid for by budget savings or productivity gains. And I've made that very clear to the representatives of workers in New South Wales. I've made it clear on the campaign trail. We believe that that's an appropriate and responsible way to deal with what is an essential worker crisis in the state.
All right, you need something like 9 seats to hit power in your own right. Can you count to 9 at the moment?
I can count to 9. I'm probably not going to detail the seats on your program. I mean, there's many contests across New South Wales. But in all seriousness, voters have got a funny way of deciding what's a marginal seat and what isn't. And as soon as you start to think that a safe seat's going to be like that forever, voters have a funny way of determining that it doesn't work that way. So we don't take anything for granted, and we're in the hunt in electorates right across the state.
And you seem to have taken an Albanese-like approach to some aspects of the campaign. You're off the drink, for example. Have you spoken to him much? Have you got much advice from him on how to win this election?
I have spoken to Anthony mainly about policy issues facing New South Wales and, challenges that we can work with the Commonwealth Government together on if we win the election on the 25th of March. My social habits, I haven't had a deep conversation with him. But, you know, the campaign's young. I've got 2 weeks to go.
All right. Well, Mike Baird in 2015 promised to transform the state. Both sides seem to be playing a bit small target, it seems to me, in this campaign. If you were to sum up how a Minns government would change the state, how would you sum that up?
I would say that we can invest and repair essential services in New South Wales without selling off essential assets. We've got a common sense plan that'll make a big difference to the state of New South Wales. And after 12 years of the incumbent government, with their best days behind them and their best people left, it's time for a change in Australia's largest state. Chris Minns, thanks for your time this afternoon. Thanks, Andrew.